Author's Press.
Hey, it's Benji Cole, son of Al Cole from CBS Radio and host of People of Distinction, the talk that gives an in-depth view of some of the most dynamic, intelligent, and successful people on the planet. And on the line with us today, we have Pastor Ed Starks III. We're going to be discussing his amazing book, The Myth, the Lie, and the True Facts About Minimum Wage. When people listen. Pastor Starks was brought to our network, People of Distinction, by some of the best publishers in the business. Authors Press Publishing. So if you or anybody you know have a book that they'd like moved, give yourself the best gift you could possibly give and contact Authors Press to move it for you. You can find out more information on them and their wonderful team at authorspress.com. And without further ado, let's bring him here on the line with us. Pastor, first and foremost, welcome to People of Distinction, and thank you very much for being a guest. How are you doing today?
I'm blessed in the Lord, Benji, and thank you for having me. I am very happy to be on your show to, as you say, to help to educate people on consumers and the labor workforce on minimum wage.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a topic that has, as you say, that the gold standard has always been $15 an hour without even understanding the history of minimum wage and what the cost of living would be across America for someone who's earning minimum wage of $15 an hour. And I think that it sounds good, but the reality is totally different. As you just pointed out yourself, that there's not too many places in 2022 America where you can live comfortably on $15 an hour. And I think people think in terms of $15 an hour, not as you alluded to, well, you spoke about, and that is they see $15 an hour not in the net, but in the gross, and they think it means it's going to mean a lot more to their economic life when in reality it's not a whole lot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and again, guys, listen, as he just talked about, when we're talking about net and gross, those numbers that I gave, that's before taxes, which means $15 an hour comes out to that $31,000 at the end of the year, but that's not actually $31,000. It's probably going to be more so like 20, 25 maybe, right? Depending on the tax bracket you fall into. Now, listen, there's so many different ways that we can go here. Pastor, before we go into your book, I do think it's important for us to know a little bit more about yourself. So let's start there. Please give our listening audience a little more background information about you.
Well, as you say, I'm a pastor, and I've been a pastor now for, I just went over 21 years as a pastor. I've been in ministry for almost 27 years. I've been married. I'm married, and I've been married December the 8th, 49 years. I'm a father of 3 daughters, and I won't give their ages, but they're all, I'll just say it like this, they're all over 40. And I have one grandson that is soon to turn 17, and I am, as you are, I'm an entrepreneur and a homeowner, and I've ran and owned several businesses. But in the beginning, it was not what the picture you see now is of me is not the picture that was in the beginning when I got out of the Marine Corps in 1974, Vietnam era Marine. And I was a newlywed, and my wife, because it was her first experience with pregnancy, she was having some minor difficulties, so she could not work. And so the family income depended solely on me. Mm-hmm. And the only job that I could get was minimum wage. And when you said something earlier about me being an expert, yes, I'm an expert on minimum wage. I think that I have a degree in minimum wageology because I had to live on minimum wage so long. And what I found as a breath of fresh air was when, to my surprise, there was in June there was a wage adjustment amount of money that an increase that they gave of 20 cents. And I was excited about it because I went from $2 to $2.20. And then I was surprised again in January when I got another cost of living increase, which was 20 cents. So now I'm at $2.40, and I could see myself going somewhere slowly but getting there. And so I continued to until I got to a point that where I got a job and I got out of college. I went to college. I was so determined, Benji, to be a breadwinner for my family that I did something that a lot of people have never heard of, but you can do in California. And that is, I was in school in my associate program, and 6 months before I completed my associate program, I had started my bachelor's program. And 6 months before I graduated with my bachelor's, I was in my master's program graduating. And unfortunately, even with 3 degrees in 3 years, I could not attain a career or even a job that paid me sufficiently. And that's what caused me to go into entrepreneurship. And I knew about that because my stepfather was an entrepreneur that made a lot of money. And he always believed in working for himself. And so I had a number of businesses that were successful in the sense that I put money into them and I got more out than I put in, but they never did become a success until really it was the last business I had prior to my real estate and childcare businesses that we had. And that was, I had went for an interview. I saw an interview in the newspaper for management, and I went and applied for it, and it was one of those hook interviews where you come in as a laborer and then hopefully you'll work up to a manager. But it was a business that they were selling carpet cleaning machines, and I had never seen any product that was that they did an ad on or advertise that did exactly what it said it would do. And I was so impressed with the product, and my commission, I'd sell them for $1,000 and my commission was $100. And I've never been the type of person that like to live on commission. I always want a salary where I can structure my income based upon how much money I'm earning week by week. And so I came home and I told my wife about it, and I said, I can't see myself as a salesman because we need money every week, not when I get sales.
Right.
But I said, I'm going to talk to him, the head manager, about letting me purchase one myself and use my commission as a down payment. And I went and pitched it to the head manager, and he saw nothing wrong with it. And I purchased my first system, and I built a business that I ran for 17 years until the Lord called me into ministry. And I fought against it. I'm going to be truthful, because I didn't see myself a preacher, even though my father was a bishop. But when the Lord calls you, he's not really asking you, he's just giving you options. And the option for me was to say, not my will, Lord, but thy will be done. So I've been in ministry. I'm still an entrepreneur on a different level. A lot of the businesses I do, the businesses that we have are hands-on, but it's not so labor-intensive as were the other businesses. So it allows me the opportunity to be in ministry in the way, not that I would want to be, but the way the Lord would have me to be. And through that, I've been blessed tremendously.
We're going to have invite you back onto the network, man, not to discuss this book in further detail or any other books you write, but just to discuss your background, because It is wonderfully eclectic and so impressive, and we're really looking forward to hearing all of the stories that I'm sure you can tell. But of course, the anchor for today is all about your book, The Myth, the Lie, and the True Facts About Minimum Wage. So without further ado, give us a brief synopsis of what your book entails.
Book entails, it gives you a history, a working history of minimum wage back to its start, where it started from, to its operation in America. It gives you the history when it was frozen by then President Ronald Reagan. It was one of his first executive decisions. His reasoning behind it, I remember seeing the news when it was live, and he said that he wanted to help small businessmen, and because he saw that 40 cents a year increase was hurting, as he said, small business people, and then it goes into the history of how minimum wage has increased from the standpoint of the United States government and state governments that have actually eclipsed what the United States government has put up as the minimum wage nationwide. And it's ironic to me because in the preamble to the Constitution, it says to provide, it says we the people of the United States, and it goes on to talk about provide for the security of the people, and it keeps referring to the people. Well, the problem was that when you freeze minimum wage, you hurt the people. And so I wanted to show in the book how we are in the position we're in now, and we're in a similar position today from what I heard on the news yesterday about the Biden administration increasing the number of IRS agents to look for money that is not being paid. And it's similar to what happened during the Reagan administration. And I pointed out in the book where when he froze minimum wages, he didn't understand when you freeze minimum wages, when people are not getting that wage adjustment increase and that cost of living increase, their taxes can't go up, because if their wages don't go up, then they don't pay more in taxes. And as a result of that, what happens is, back in the 80s, then President Ronald Reagan, he was looking for ways to increase the tax-based revenue to a point that he started looking at waiters and waitresses and busboys, all those people that really delivery people, all those people in the labor force that don't earn their living from their hourly wage, but they earn their living from the tips, porters and stuff. And then that's why you see when you go in restaurants now, sometimes you'll see glasses and jars where the tips are collected. I have a business associate back in my hometown, San Antonio, and he has a chain of fish restaurants, fine restaurants you can go in and eat a fine dinner. And I asked him, I said, what is that clear bucket doing up there? And he says, that's where my servers, they put their tips in that jar. And he said, they give me the tips and I pay their health insurance. That's the trade-off. They give up the tips and I pay for their health insurance. And that was one of the things that came out of that when they started looking at people's tips. Because I can tell you, as I said, I have a degree in minimum wageology because I lived it for many years, earning my earnings with minimum wage. But I remember when I was a pizza delivery boy, I was getting minimum wage, but where I made my living at was on my tips.
Absolutely.
And I'd go out and at night and deliver pizzas, and Benji, and sometimes I would make, and this was back in the 70s, I was making as much as $50 or $60 a night in tips, and sometimes I'd get tips from one person, $30 or $40, so he went after a plum when he went after it. But the problem with going after people's tips is based on the honor system. If they're going to tell you how much they really got in tips, or they're going to tell you what they want to tell you, because there was never a way for you to know from night to night or day to day how much your tips were going to be. And it's like now, I heard on the news yesterday that with this increased IRS labor force, they're going to go after people who have GoFundMe pages. And they say that they're going to charge them with that GoFundMe page that might be for funeral expenses or some type of trauma economically that they're not able to get a loan, so they ask them from the generosity of the public, that they're going to be charged with that GoFundMe funding as income and be taxed on it. And so we're back at that same situation again from the administration of the 80s to now the administration in the 2022, from the Biden administration back to the previous administration I spoke about, that where the government is looking for more money. And the reason why it keeps having to look for more money, I'm not talking about what it's did in these bills that they're coming up with, but the reason why they're looking for more money is because the minimum wage is lagging. If minimum wage was up, that where people were making on the lower end of the echelon were making more money, then they would pay more taxes. And as long as you kept the base, which is the majority of people, making more money through wage increases and cost of living increases, that where they have a living wage, then you have a broader base of tax-based revenue at your disposal that will come in yearly, every year. And for some reason or another, the administrations of the presidential administrations, they're missing that point. That's where you want to, if you want a rich and lively tax-based revenue that comes in on a regular basis, biannually and annually, you have to have a minimum wage that's living, that's continuously growing, that you can draw those additional taxes from.
Pastor, next question here. What would you see? Let's talk about inspiration for a second. What were you seeing that made you feel, because all of this information, valuable information, of course, that you picked up over your years, I mean, you very easily could have verbally told those around you, right? I mean, this could have been a personal book that you kept on your shelf, but you wanted to put it out for the public. Talk to me about what inspired you. What were you seeing that made you feel this would be beneficial to anybody that picked it up?
Well, what inspired me was when I began to look at the revolution of, and what I mean by that, the people that were out actually protesting city governments and businesses for a higher wage, minimum wage. And as I listened to them, and we talked about it earlier, Benji, about the $15, the golden goose, the $15 an hour. And as I kept hearing that began to resonate in my mind, $15. Why are they stuck on $15? What is it about $15? And then it dawned on me that the reason why they're going for $15 is because it seems like a lot when they think about it, but not on paper. And so my inspiration was to educate people in the area of minimum wage, that where when they assert their rights as an American part of the American labor force to ask for a living wage, I think it was Dr. King that said you have to know where you've been to know where you're going. And most folk, like when I was coming along, and as I said, receiving $2 an hour, most of these people that are asking for a raise in minimum wage up to $15 an hour, they weren't even born. So they have no idea. And these are the people that are coming along now, Benji, that's going to shape America. And so they need to know, have a good roadmap to ask questions and demand answers in a definitive way rather than a haphazard way of $15 an hour.
Pastor, as we close out of this fantastic interview, because guys, listen, what I said, you know where you got to go. There's no getting around it, okay? The myth, the lie, and the true facts about minimum wage is the title you have to pick up. And Pastor Ed Starks III is the author you have to thank for bringing this wonderful book to your table. What do we do with this information, Pastor? I mean, this is probably unfair to ask because I know it's so broad. But of course, the awareness in and of itself is profound. And that in and of itself is probably enough, right, to create this awareness, because that's going to lead to discussions which will then continue to spread. But in your opinion, where do we go? What do we do moving forward?
Where do we go and what do we do moving forward, Benji, is a good question. And the Holy Spirit just gave me an answer when you asked me. And that is what I found out. I had a problem one time, Benji, with the IRS. I had, we had just paid our taxes, my wife and I, and I'll tell you, we owed $4,700, $4,500. And when I sent my return in, I sent in $1,000, a cashier's check for $1,000. And then they sent me a statement back saying that they had received $1,000 and I owed $3,500. And I sent, that end of the statement in with another $1,000. Now, I was expecting some money that was coming, but I couldn't be sure exactly when it was going to get here. They sent me another statement receiving the next $1,000, and they said I owed $2,500 and that I was to pay it by a certain time or they were going to execute the right of the IRS to seize my assets, freeze my bank accounts, and all those things that they have at their disposal. So my wife, when she read me the letter, I think I was outside painting trim or something on the house, and I told her, I said, well, call them back and tell them that give me 10 days and we'll pay the balance off. So when she called this IRS fellow back, very nice man, he said, well, I tell you what, instead of 10 days, I'll put on the notes that we'll pay it, that you'll pay it off within 20 days. No, he said, I'll give you a month to pay the balance off. So about 10 or 15 days later, the money came that I was expecting, and we sent a cashier's check to pay off the balance, $2,500. I happened to be going to get some gas, and I was using my debit card, and it said no money was available. I knew that didn't make sense because we had about maybe $3,500 on the credit card, in the debit card. Mm-hmm. And so come home and I asked my wife about it. I say, hey, babe, I had to put my last money in there. The debit card wouldn't take. So she goes on the computer and look it up, and she said, well, that should be money in there. So she called the bank and everything. We had paid Benji, IRS, all the money that we owed them, and it had happened maybe 10 days prior to them taking an action to seize all our assets. And so I didn't know where to go. And so we were calling IRS, and I know you've heard the horror stories, and they can be, some of those agents can be very vicious. They told me, well, you should have paid your money on time and all. And we stayed on the phone with them all day and couldn't get no release. And so my baby brother at the time, his first wife was a field grade IRS agent. And so my wife asked me, said, well, can I call our sister-in-law and ask her, can she give us some help? And she told us what to do. She says, listen, call them back again. And this is for your listening audience, too. If you ever have a problem with the IRS, she said, call them back again. And if they still give you a problem, tell them you're going to request a congressional, meaning you're going to go to one of your senators, the United States senators, or a United States congressperson, and you're going to file a complaint against them. And they'll square away. So when my wife told me that, I said, I had a headache from yesterday. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to call my congressman. And at that time, his office was right up the street from my home. And I called him. And the lady was real nice on the phone. And she told me, she said, well, we have someone in here that works with the IRS. At your convenience, when could you come in? I said, I can come in now. You go in there, you don't write down anything. You tell them, they write it down. And they took care of it. And Benji, to this day, I have a letter from the IRS apologizing for what they had done to me. And my point to this story is, when you ask the question, what should we do? They always say, when you have a problem, I learned from that, Benji, if you have a problem with your city government, go to your city council. If you have a problem with your county, go to your county supervisor. If you have a problem with your state, go to your state senator or state assembly person. Likewise, we have a problem in this country when it comes to minimum wage. What we have to do, the labor force of America, they have to contact their senator, U.S. senator, and their U.S. congressman in their district, and tell them that they want a living wage the minimum living wage standard act passed, that where it's not $15 an hour, but a living wage, and to reinstitute the wage adjustment increase and the cost of living increase, and that it should become law that where it is always there for the people, not for businesses, but for the people.
The education is real. Again, this is a fantastic book to add to your shelf, and even better gift to add to someone else's. Head on over there today and pick up your copy of The Myth, the Lie, and the True Facts About Minimum Wage by Pastor Ed Starks III. Pastor, this has been an absolute pleasure. Thank you once again for being a guest on People of Distinction.
God bless you, and may God keep you in the name of Jesus, Benji. Have a blessed day.